according to the instructions, the main fins are mounted first, and that's fine unless you're going to use a fin guide during the assembly process. And so since fin guides like this type have to slip over the tube, then in order to do this and be able to get the guide back off, we need to slide it down here and put the aft fins on first, and then slide it forward to put the main fins on. Okay, now if you're just going to do this freehand, you can go ahead and just follow the instructions or do it backwards like I'm going to do. Something else to consider, if you're going to sand or fill the 3D printing marks here on the tailpiece, you'll probably want to do that before you glue the fins on. That way you're less likely to damage the fins. As I said, I actually like the contour here, and to tell you the truth, usually once it gets done being primed and painted, you can't see much of it anyway. I did add a little bit of contour putty here along the seam, so I had a little bit of separation as the glue dried there. And so this is another place, if you want to do this type of fine mending in here, then do that before you put the fins on. At this time, we can attach the fins, and I'm going to use wood glue for this. And as I mentioned earlier, because of the way I'm going to assemble this, I'm going to start with the aft fins first and then put the main fins on. So here I'm just going to take one of the fins, put a small bead of glue on there. We don't want this really thick right now, as all that'll do is make it take longer to dry. Go ahead and smooth that out. Okay, and I'm going to find the little mark that I made earlier. Okay, and I'm just going to put that onto the line and then pull it right back off again. And now I'm going to wait about 60 seconds for that to get tacky, and then come back and put the fin back on. Some time has passed now, and I will go ahead and put this back on. And doing this gives us two tacky surfaces which are less likely to come loose. Okay, so now I'm just going to align this with my line, and then look down the length to make sure it's perpendicular. Okay, and then let this dry for at least 5 minutes and then go on to the next one. Now if you're going to use a fin alignment guide like the one I've got here, at this point go ahead and mount that on. Okay, and now I'm just going to bring this up just to the tip there. Okay, these fins are actually a little bit thicker than standard 1/8 inch, which is what this particular alignment guide is made for, so I can only stick it right on the edge there, but that's fine. That's going to give me the appropriate spacing all the way around here. Alright, so after this one glues for about 5 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and repeat the process all the way around the tube, but off camera. At this point, I have all of my aft fins in place. And now I'm just going to repeat the process on the forward main fins. So once again, I'm going to take some wood glue here and just run a thin bead along the edge. And now I'm going to put that at my mark. Okay. Press it down, lift that back up, and wait for 30 to 60 seconds. And now that the glue has become tacky, I will go ahead here and just put this right back on place. Push that down, and then once more check to make sure it's in line, not only with the lines themselves, but with the aft fins. Alright, I'm going to let this dry for about 5 to 10 minutes and then continue off camera with the other 3 fins. While the main fins are drying, we can go ahead and put the canard fins onto the nose cone. And the first thing I'm going to do here is just friction fit these in. Make sure there aren't any problems. Okay, and then I'm going to put these in using just regular super glue. All right, so just one at a time here. Okay, now there's not much to line these up with, so you really need to do a good job of eyeballing them. Okay, I'm just going to hold this for 30 seconds or so to make sure everything sets up, and then I'll do the same thing all the way around off camera. Now that the canard fins are dried, we can go back toward the beginning of the instructions and add the nose weight. And this way we won't have to worry about it interfering with the glue on the canards. So just go ahead and open up the bag of clay here. And then we're just going to pinch off bits of this. And you can either make small bits and drop them down in there, or you can turn these into worms and kind of slide them in. Either way is fine. And it's going to be helpful to have some sort of a rod or a dowel in order to pack these down. So after you put a little bit in there, just pack those down. Get it as far forward as you possibly can. And then just continue that until all of the clay has been added. Alright, so that's loaded it in there, and you can kind of see it comes up to about this level, so a good portion of the nose cone is filled with the clay at this point. Now remember, do not fly this without the weight in here. If you want to substitute something for the clay, like BBs and epoxy or something like that, that's fine. Just make sure that it's at least 60 grams of mass in there. Alright, I have the main fins attached now. And the next task is to apply the launch lugs. And these are going to be attached directly to the fins. And in that way we'll be able to clear the tail cone here. Alright, so according to the instructions, this needs to be 9 inches from the base of the rocket. Okay, now in this case it's not going to be a big deal if I'm off a little bit because of the curvature of the tail cone, but I can estimate it here. So 9 inches is going to be right here. Okay, and then from that we need to measure 1/2 inch here from the body tube. So it's going to go right there. Okay, and now I'm just going to make another mark a little more than an inch down the row here, also at 1/2 inch. Okay, and then I can form a line there. Okay, and this will also allow me to place a line down here on the lower fin. All right, now I'm going to recheck that to make sure it's also at 1/2 inch, which it is. Okay, so the forward launch lug here, you can just glue the entire thing on, just like that. For the aft launch lug, we're going to need to trim it. So I'm going to place it on here. All right, I'm just going to check that length. And I'm going to revert to metric here just because I can. All right, so that's going to be about 1.5 centimeters. So I'm just going to take one of the launch lugs and mark it there. And then cut this. Alright, then I can just take a little bit of wood glue here. Apply that. I'm just going to use a little bit to begin with, and then we'll come back and put fillets on everything. Okay, so I'm going to put that right on the line. And then quickly I'm going to do the other one so that if I need to change the alignment for anything, I can still have some wiggle room with the glue. Okay, so this is going to go here on the other line. All right, and now I can sight down this and make sure that they're in line, and also that they're going to clear the tail cone. Okay. And it looks like both of those are okay. So I'm going to let this dry in a horizontal position here, and then once those have dried, we'll come back and do fillets for the launch lugs and the fins. Now that the glue has dried on the launch lugs, I can apply fillets all around. And so we're going to have a lot of fillets here. And pretty much this is going to go like any other model rocket does. And so I suggest doing one facing side at a time. So I'm going to start with this fin. And this fin. Right, and get some tissues handy, and now I'm just going to smooth those in with a finger. Okay, and get rid of that excess up top. I'm making it worse there. Okay, and then the same thing over here. Alright, and then I'll do the same thing down here on the aft fins. Use a little less glue on these ones. Okay, and then we'll let those dry horizontally so they don't run one end or another. And then once those have set enough that they won't run, I can change to the next face and do the same thing there. And then I'll also do fillets for the two launch lugs. So this is going to take a while to get done all the way around, and I'll do the rest of it off camera. My fillets have all dried overnight, and so those are nice and structurally sound. Now if you want to build these up, or if you get something like this, so here I've got some bubbling that occurred here along the fillet, and you can either add some more glue to that, or what I'm going to do is add some contour putty to that to fill that in. Now the contour putty is not great structurally, but this is still glued on there well, so I don't need any more structural adhesive. But the contour putty will go into this and dry smoothly without the bubbles there. So structurally, the last thing we need to do is to connect the recovery system here. So go ahead and bring the shock cord back out. Now you may want to wait on this until after you paint it, and that's going to depend on how you paint and what type of color scheme you want. So I'm going to show you how to do this, but on mine I'm going to then remove. I'm going to take this back apart again for painting. So for the shock cord, simply pass it through the eyelet on the nose cone. Okay. Tie a double knot or 2 half hitches here. Alright, and tie that down nice and tight. Okay. Once that is as tight of a knot as you can make it, cut off the excess of the free end here back to about 5 millimeters, or about 1/4 inch or so. And that will keep it from doing this, where it can get trapped between the shoulder and the body tube. We don't want that. Okay. And then once you're ready to have this in place permanently, I recommend putting just a little drop of white or wood glue in here. Work that into the knot, and that'll help keep it from slipping. Now, according to the instructions, they tie the parachute directly to the nose cone. If you've seen any of my other rocket videos, you'll know I don't like to do that. So instead, I've got a snap swivel here that you can get from the fishing section of most stores. And now I'm going to gather up all of my shroud lines here and just loop those around one finger. All right, and then I'm going to take my parachute and grab the center of it right there. Okay, and then pull on the shroud lines, and all of the corners there should be meeting up fairly uniformly. Okay, and so once you've got, if they're not, you can just change the length of the shroud lines by adjusting which one's sliding past another. All right, so back in here where I was holding it on my finger, now I'm going to pinch that off so I don't change the shroud line length back here. All right, so you never want to fully let go of those. And now I'm just going to thread that loop of shroud lines through the swivel end of my snap swivel. Okay, and again, I'm not letting go back here. And now I'm going to pass the entire swivel through the loop. Okay, and then pull that taut so that it forms a knot down here. And then you can add, again, just like with the shock cord, I'm going to add a little touch of glue to this. Okay, it does not need much, just squirt a little tiny amount. There we go. I'm just going to work that into the knot and let that dry. And now when I'm ready to fly this, I simply take the snap portion of this, open it up, clip it onto the nose cone, all right, and then close that up. And then this can be packed in whichever way you prefer to pack your parachutes. So structurally, at this point, we're done. I now am going to go on to prime this, paint it, and apply the decals. For the paint, they recommend in the instructions using a silver or aluminum paint. And I would recommend using a filling sandable sealer, at least initially. That'll help catch any of the little grooves and such here, as well as any of the grain that didn't get filled in by the sanding sealer. Here's what the rocket looks like after a few coats of primer. And one of the things the primer does is really highlight where we may have some imperfections along my fillets here, so it really stands out the bubbles. Okay, and then it also shows us where there might be some rough patches from sanding. So there's some there, there's some there. Over here on the nose cone, it looks pretty good. There are a few little rough areas, but it looks pretty good overall. And so what I'll do next is sand down those rough spots, take some contour putty and fill in the imperfections here. If you don't have that, you can also use wood putty. That works really well in the same way. Okay, and then after it's been sanded, I will go ahead and give it another coat of primer. I've finished painting the main body, and one of the things that silver paint really does is bring out imperfections. So you can see here the spirals are not completely filled. You can still see a little bit of wood grain there. And this is completely up to how long you want to spend on it. So if you want to have a perfect finish here, you're going to need to spend a lot more time priming and sanding before putting the finish coat on. Painting aside, I'm going to go ahead and put on the decals here. These are all water slide decals, and we're going to start with the rocket in this position. Okay, and then as we rotate it, we'll go to side B, C, and D. So this is considered side A here. And I'm not going to show every single placement on here. That would just take too long. But I'll start with a few of them in case you're not familiar with water slide decals. And then you can refer to this page to show where every single decal goes. So you'll want to have some room temperature to lukewarm water available. And I'm going to start with the nose cone here. So on the nose cone, we're going to have these 4 A decals, and they'll go from 1/2 inch from the edge of the nose cone, or from the end of the nose cone, along the fin lines toward the canards. So I am going to start by cutting these out. I'm going to cut them pretty close to flush. I'll leave just a little bit of edge around them. Okay. And come this way. And then we want to leave that A out of there. So again, I'm just going to leave a little bit of white space on the ends. I'm going to cut off that little bit of excess there. Okay, and now I'm going to cut these apart, and again, I'm trying to get the same amount of white space between. the 4 A stripes there, and the rest of that can be discarded. So now, one at a time, you don't want to do these all at once. I'm going to go ahead and soak these in the water. And it usually takes 15 to 20 seconds for them to saturate. As small as these are, they may go even quicker. And then I'm going to go ahead and get my nose cone here. Now I'm going to be really careful. So I've got a metal ruler. It's going to scratch fairly easily. I'm going to measure right to, well, I need to do this in line with a canard fin here. Let me do this again. Okay, so here I'm just going to take a pencil and make just a little tiny mark right there. More of a dent in the paint than anything else. Okay, and let's see if this is ready. So here I'm just going to hold on to one end and then slide the paper out. Okay, and I'm not even close to where I need to be, so I'm just going to slide this over. Alright, so I want it on my mark, and I want it in line with that canard. So I can just very gently pull on this until I've got it straight. Okay, now I'm just going to look down it. Pretty close, but still a little bit off. Okay, and once you've got it straight, then take a tissue and squeegee out the water. I'm going to move that up just a little bit there. Okay, and then I'm going to repeat that 3 more times with the other yellow stripes. So I have the A decals in place, and then just going down the length of the rocket here, the next one is the D decal, and this is going to wrap around the base of the nose cone here. So I've already cut it out. It's in discontinuous pieces here, but this should be able to go on as a wrap. So we'll go ahead and soak that one. The only drawback to being that long is that it is easier to break them. Okay, that's just starting to move. So I'm going to go ahead and gently peel that and then hold on to it. Just kind of go around here. Not too concerned with being extremely straight here, but I do want to try and get it flat. Okay, so I'm going to get those lines just above the bevel of the nose cone. And that looks pretty good. So I'll come around here to one end. And I'm just going to blot this. I don't want to put a lot of tension on it as I'm afraid I might break it. Now there's a little wrinkle there. I'm going to have to squeegee that out a bit. And that one's, looks like the color just came off that a little bit. Okay. So let that dry. Just a bit, and the rest of the decals are going to go on the body tube. I went back and remeasured the distance for the D decal here, and actually I think it's supposed to go right on the forward edge of the body tube here. Okay, so you can do that instead. It's not, unless you're in a competition, it's not a big deal here. Alright, and so next we're going to have the H decals, alright, which are these letters here. And then the B decals, these are going to go very close to the edge of the body tube here and in line with the fins. And then as we go further down, we have the E and the F decals. These are 2 more wraps, and those will go further down there. I'm going to go ahead and do these parts off camera. Okay, I've got some of the decals on here with varying success. The first yellow stripe went on really well, and then 2 of them really kind of crinkled there. It's been a while since I've done these. Alright, and then we have the 2 band ones here. And I'm going to go skip over the ones that go around the wings here for just a minute. The last big wrap here, G, that goes in between the 2 sets of fins. And this is all one decal, so it says keep together here. Okay, so I'm going to cut out this whole thing, and that's going to wrap in between here. So here's my completed model. I did leave a few of the detailed decals off here. I was having a lot of trouble keeping them straight, and since I'm not trying to make this perfectly scale, I wasn't too worried about it. You can see a little bit of what looks like beige spots here. That's where my clear coat has not quite cured yet, but it's getting there. But for all intents and purposes here, this rocket is done, and so I hope you had a good time building this with me. Have a great flight, a safe recovery, and please watch some of my other videos.